collaboratively on interfaith and interfaith projects together. I think the first 3 weeks will be at Santa Barbara University, and we'll be exploring how to tackle some of the religious tensions in the world through collaborative interfaith work and interfaith dialogue. So I only found out yesterday, so I'm still a bit in awe of the fact that this has happened, but I'm very, very excited. I think it's important.
This is a very significant achievement. Now, you've been working in interfaith matters for quite some time, haven't you?
I have, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what work do you do in Scotland that relates to interfaith activities?
I work for the Scottish Interfaith Council, and I'm their Development and Education Officer. And I've been working as a Development and Education Officer since 2002, and it's great, exciting work actually.
What are your responsibilities as the Development Officer?
Okay, this is going to sound really daunting, but of course I have a whole team of people behind, working with me and supporting. We have a 40-member council, a 9-member executive, and we have 4 members of staff now. Although when I first came into post, I was the first paid interfaith worker in Scotland ever, as far as I'm aware. This was a completely new post.
So you're a pioneer.
Well, the organisation is. And the work that I do is I work with faith communities, encouraging them to dialogue with each other, bringing them together, having seminars and workshops and training events, that kind of thing.
Did a lot of work with children in schools, and they used to love it. It was something so different and unique, especially for a bunch of young youth to be going and working with them. It showed them hope in some ways.
So what other themes did Artworks cover?
We did shows working together, sharing of different skills, because the Baha'i faith has so many ideas of everyone has their own skills, and not until you bring them together, will the world progress and stuff. And so we use that idea a lot.
And how long were you part of Artworks?
I was with Artworks for 11 months. First 2 months I was training. We did training 9 till 5 every day, and the rest of about 5 months we were performing in and around Perth, and would travel to close communities, close by. Close meaning it could be 5 hours away.
So where did you travel to with Artworks?
We did a lot of touring around South Australia, down to Albany and places like that. We also, the last couple of months of my service, we did a lot of touring. We did a huge big tour of the Western Australia, then we went all the way up to Northern Territory, and then we came back down to South Australia and came across to Perth. So we did a lot of travelling, and this was all by bus.
So what sort of audiences were there?
We did a lot of work with the native people, with the Aboriginal people. We used to tour to their little communities, because Aboriginal people, they usually live on the outskirts of the main kind of urban places, and they would travel on these dirt roads, for an hour or two, and arrive at these little communities where there might be a community of say 200 people. And I used to love going into these communities. The Aboriginal people, they're just the most beautiful people you'll find. They're just so humble and so warm-hearted. During that time, working with the kids, they just were so fond of you, They looked up to you because they never see a performing arts group of such, or people of a different colour, coming to work with them. It was something really amazing for them to see that.
So during that time, did you get any media coverage?
We did. We got, especially when we were touring in these rural areas, there was a lot of media, coverage. Would usually most likely end up in some sort of paper, because just performing arts groups don't go to little communities, So we got a lot of paper coverage.
So you were talking about doing 2 months of training before you went out and did your performances. In that time, what did you do?
We did a lot of dance training. A lot of the training time was taken up with dance. We learnt scripts, so we would spend many hours learning our scripts. We also had paint training. You'd be thrown at the board and told, can you paint this image in a minute, you know? So you'd go through a lot of training like that. We also had a lot of flipping and acrobatic training, sort of. We taught how to do flips and little things that would try and just impress the crowds, nothing too much. Yeah, and then we did workshop in school performances, and we were taught kind of, that was on the spot sort of training. You'd go into the school and someone would be doing it and you'd kind of learn like that.
How did Artworks start?
Artworks was founded by a couple of Baha'i youth back in, I think it was 1996. And it basically started with the guy Phil, who came up with this idea that, you know, wouldn't it be amazing to have just someone splashing paint around, you know, sort of like Rolf Harris type thing, and being able to use a kind of story throughout the painting, you know, so it kind of emerge into a piece. And him and a couple of others, they got together and they were doing workshops in schools, you know, just with kids and painting. And then one school booked them and said, so, you know, can you guys dance and do a big show for us? And I think all of a sudden they were like, sure, we can do that. Put on the spot, and they had to come up with this dance drama thing. Apparently it just wasn't happening too well, and didn't go down that great. But from that, there was a vision that they could do better, and they built it up, and now it's just really grown into something quite amazing.
Speaking to Helen Melson, an 18-year-old who went to Perth, Australia to do a youth year of service. She joined a group, Artworks, and today we're talking to her a little bit about that. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you.
So Helen, what made you do a year of service?
I think what made me go and do youth year of service was hearing the stories that a lot of youth would come back with about how they'd served in different countries and the sort of experience they'd gained.
So why did you choose Perth, Australia, and what sort of preparation did you need to do before you left?
Perth came to me very unexpectedly. I was, at the time, my father was encouraging me to go over to Perth for a bit of a break, you know, just to get away from New Zealand, and also to do what they call the Collis Featherston Teaching Project, which is a course set up in Perth for 2 weeks or so, where you go and do service around the communities. So I went over there to do that. In the back of my mind, I'd known about Artworks and I'd heard a lot about it, and I thought, you know, I'm going to give this a go. I'm going to go talk to them, you know, see what kind of things you have to do to get in. And I went and I said, I'd like to know, what I need to do to join, because I'm very keen and I'm not too sure what I want to do for this next year. They said, come along, we'll give you an interview and we'll see what you want to, what you're like and how you can help us in some ways. And I had an interview and they said, yeah, we've got a space if you'd like to join. So it was very unexpected. I'd gone over to Perth with all my summer clothes, a suitcase of summer clothes, nothing else. And I ended up staying.
So can you tell us what Artworks is about?
Artworks is a Baha'i-inspired performing arts group. It uses a lot of the Baha'i teachings as the base of what we try to portray, like unity and diversity, like learning to work together,
How do you portray those sorts of messages to your audiences?
It's portrayed through dance, drama and art. It's very, very unique sort of idea that one of the founders came up with. We do sort of like a Rolf Harris type thing. You've got these big huge boards along the back of a wall and you have choreographed dances with music, and so you kind of paint and dance at the same time between parts of the music where you might be dancing, you might be painting, different members are kind of running up doing different things.
Quite liberated by their religious experiences. I think possibly the human spirit is naturally inclined towards peace. Men and women should have access to equal opportunities in all aspects of life. As I work with faith communities, encouraging them to dialogue with each other, bringing them together, having seminars and workshops and training events, that kind of thing, for Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, Jews, Christians, Buddhists, Baha'is.
Kia ora. Welcome to Baha'i On Air. My name is Heather Simpson. Today I have a special guest, Dr. Maureen Sire, who has come from Scotland to the Pacific region. Welcome, Maureen. Thank you for coming to spend some time with us.
Thank you.
Maureen, I understand that you have just won a Fulbright scholarship. Could you tell me about that?
Yes, I'm actually very excited about that. This is the first time that the Fulbright UK-US Scholarship Awards have gone to an interfaith project. And this was a scholarship that was offered to 13 different countries around the world. And eventually they've chosen a delegation of 10 individuals who will go to America for 4 months, and they'll work collaboratively on interfaith projects together. I think the first 3 weeks will be at Santa Barbara University, and we'll be exploring how to tackle some of the religious tensions in the world through collaborative interfaith work and interfaith dialogue. So I only found out yesterday, so I'm still a bit in awe of the fact that this has happened, but I'm very, very excited. I think it's important.
This is a very significant achievement. Now, you've been working in interfaith matters for quite some time, haven't you?
I have, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what work do you do in Scotland that relates to interfaith activities?
I work for the Scottish Interfaith Council, and I'm their Development and Education Officer. And I've been working as a Development and Education Officer since 2002. And it's great, exciting work, actually.
What are your responsibilities as the development officer?
Okay, this is going to sound really daunting, but of course I have a whole, team of people behind, working with me and supporting. We have a 40-member council, a 9-member executive, and we have 4 members of staff now. Although when I first came into post, I was the first paid interfaith worker in Scotland ever, as far as I'm aware. This was a completely new post.
So you're a pioneer.
Well, the organisation is. And the work that I do is I work with faith communities, encouraging them to dialogue with each other, bringing them together, having seminars and workshops and training events, that kind of thing, for Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, Jews, Christians, Buddhists, Baha'is, all the faiths of Scotland. We have a very multi-faith country. I also work with young people, with women, and do an interfaith conference, interfaith retreats for young people, seminars for women. I support the local interfaith groups of Scotland. There are 10 of those at the moment, 12 now, 12 interfaith groups scattered all over Scotland, from the urban areas of Glasgow and Edinburgh right up to Shetland Isles, in far north of Scotland. There are interfaith groups up there. Part of the role of the Interfaith Council is also to involve the minority faith communities particularly, but all faith communities, in government processes and civic processes, making sure they have a voice in the Scottish Executive and Scottish Parliament, making sure they know what the issues of the day are that might affect them and their faith communities. And we do faith awareness training. In fact, it's all kinds of things. We have publications. A Guide to Faith Communities in Scotland was one, for example. Our young people put together a fabulous publication on how to be eco-friendly in your faith community. And they worked collaboratively, young people from all the faiths of Scotland, working on that together. And I could go on and on and on and ramble on, but I mean, it's exciting work. And what's really nice is there's a real commitment in Scotland to interfaith dialogue at all levels. The religious leaders support the work that we're doing, and we facilitate biannual, twice a year meetings of the religious leaders of Scotland. There's local groups, there's national organisation. It really is, very vibrant.
It sounds to me like an idea which is permeating all levels of society, and I'm wondering if interfaith activities are promoted through schools.
Yes, there's a wonderful movement called the Religious Education Movement in Scotland. I mean, we have really very, very good religious and moral education anyway in Scotland, from primary school right through to secondary school, right through to universities. Of course, you can do religious studies degrees, where young people from 5 onwards look at the different world religions and explore aspects of the different world religions. Right through to secondary school, they can take their higher degrees and such like in religious education. And the religious education movement's there to support religious education in Scotland and RE teachers. It's called Religious and Moral Education. So there's a good understanding, I think, in Scotland about how important it is to recognise the diversity of faiths that there are in the world. And that's great,
That's excellent to hear that the young people are being included, because as we know, as the twig is bent, so the tree will grow.
Yeah.
That's wonderful news. Tell me about your work with women in Scotland.
Well, we have an interfaith seminar for women every year, and of course I visit women in the faith communities and do presentations and workshops and various things there. The seminar last year was on women and war. How can we work together for peace? And that was very exciting. And we had a speaker from the Muslim community who's got an MBE, Farkhanda Chowdhury, and she'd done fantastic work in Iraq, working with the women in that sort of war zone. I think it's fair enough to say it's a war zone. And another woman who'd worked in Nepal, because Nepal's been fairly under siege, previously, and there was a civil war there. And so that would be an example of one of our seminars. This year it was looking after one another, the safety and security of our faith communities, and the police, the national police, were launching their religion and belief handbook on how they're going to try to work more closely with the faith communities. So we did quite a bit there. And
I see.
every year we have a different theme, and women from all over come. I think this year there was about 90 women from different faith communities, and 17 police officers and members of government and all sorts came to the seminar.
So I can see what a help it would be to the wider community to have women involved in such projects as keeping our communities safe, and also women working for peace.
Yes.
Do you find that women are naturally inclined towards peace?
I do. Yes, I think I think possibly the human spirit is naturally inclined towards peace. We just haven't quite worked out how to to harness our natural inclinations towards peace. Really, my background is I'm a member of the Baha'i faith, and that's very much at the forefront of Baha'i thinking. That when eventually women have full equality with men, that there will, and it'll be in a time of an end to war. So I think there probably is quite a strong correlation between women and peace. I mean, I sense that. And certainly when I visit the women in the faith communities of Scotland, I can just say they're wonderful, really wonderful souls, and very, very dedicated to service to humanity.
The Baha'i faith is well established throughout Scotland. It has communities as far north as the Shetland Isles and as far south as the Borders.
There's an analogy in the Baha'i writings, which I can't quote but I can paraphrase, in that men and women are likened to the wings of a bird. If a man or a woman is suppressed, then it's like the wing is damaged or broken and the bird cannot fly. But if men and women are equal, the wings have equal strength and the bird can continue with its flight.
Buddhism, hurt not others as you yourself would find hurtful. Judaism, we should love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Christianity, do unto others as ye would want them to do unto you. Islam, desire for your brother that which ye desire for yourself. Baha'i, blessed is he who prefers his brother before himself. In a world where religious differences is the cause of dissension and strife, isn't it nice to know there is a place where we can all be one?
Now tell me, what brings you to New Zealand?
Okay, well, a mixture of things actually bring me to New Zealand. The main thing is I have just been in Samoa and spent a few weeks there. I studied in Samoa for 5 years and taught at the National University there. I did my doctorate in Samoa. So I was in Samoa doing some follow-up postdoctoral work in Samoa. So I've been there and was coming through New Zealand on my way back home to Scotland, and actually met with the Auckland Interfaith group last night.
Tell me about your doctorate work in Samoa. What were you studying in Samoa?
Well, what first took me to Samoa was my master's thesis, which was a study of the Baha'is of Samoa and Tonga and their impact on the local culture. And it was doing that master's thesis that I first became aware of the incredible role that women play in religion in the Pacific. And it made me think, well, I wonder if this is the case really worldwide, but it certainly was true of Indigenous women and certainly was true of Samoan women. So from that master's thesis, I went on to do my PhD, which has got a long, convoluted title as PhDs have, but it was basically Empowerment and Constraint, the cultural legacy of Indigenous and colonial religion and its impact on women in Samoa. So I looked at pre-Christian religion and what was still left of it, what was still practiced in Samoa and the role that women play in that. I looked at the mainline traditions, which I've called the historic mainline traditions, which were Methodist, Catholic and Congregationalist. And that was the middle section of the thesis. And the final section was looking at newer religions in Samoa, so the Latter-day Saints, the Baha'is, and the more charismatic Christian groups, looking at their structures and their impact, and all of this focusing on women. And one of the things that emerged, I suppose, in the process of doing a study, of looking at something, you end up developing a theory or a theoretical stance. And one of the things that I felt very strongly about was I'd read a lot of feminist literature, a lot of literature about women, and I was quite disturbed by the fact that most feminist literature is very negative about the role that religion has played in women's lives, either that it's misogynist or that this kind of thing, the hierarchies are all male and etc. But my own experience of being a Baha'i, I actually found that religion was incredibly empowering to me and very, very liberating. And I knew as well from being in Samoa that the Samoan women are quite liberated by their religious experiences and play a key role in religion in Samoa. And so I thought there needed to be at least the beginning of a theory, or starting to look at a theory that would explore the positive aspects of religion in terms of women's advancement, as well as acknowledging that there have been structures that have been imposed on women in a religious context that are not necessarily empowering. So that's where the empowerment and constraint come in. It was looking at, you know, both aspects and sort of saying, well, where do we go from here?
Looking at the impact of religion on women's lives in Samoa, in a lot of the different religious communities in Samoa, Methodist, Congregationalist, Catholic, Baha'i, Mormon as well, the Latter-day Saints, and also Charismatic Christians. So I looked at the role of women in all these different religious communities. Well, what I found was really fascinating, because I found that traditionally feminist theories of religion say that religion oppresses women. And I wanted to challenge that, because the first time I came to Samoa in 1995, I had felt that religion had really empowered women in Samoa, that they were very committed to their religion and that it gave them a lot of joy.